They said it was just for the renovation. That's what Megan whispered, her fingers tightening ever so gently on my arm as Kyle parked the SUV at the end of a long, winding driveway that led to a building I had never seen before. Cedar Grove Retirement Center. The name sounded gentle enough, like the title of a postcard, but as soon as I saw the steel-framed glass doors and the uniformed staff waiting behind them, I felt it. A shift. The kind you only notice when you've lived long enough to recognize masks made of manners. "We're just rewiring the house, Dad," Megan said softly, like she was trying to speak to a child. "Old place like that? You know it's a fire risk. This is temporary. Promise." I didn't answer. My mouth was dry, not from thirst, but from what I was swallowing down. Pride. Suspicion. Something too bitter for breakfast. I looked up at the sky instead, wide, overcast, tired. "Same as me." Carl jumped out first, all energy and cologne, flashing his everything's fine smile as he opened my door with the flair of a game show host. "Welcome to your 5-star suite, Harry," he said. "Cedar Grove's got room service, nurses on call, even a little garden for your walks." He made it sound like a vacation. But I wasn't holding a suitcase. I was holding a file folder with my name on it, one Megan had packed in a rush. It had my insurance card, my will, my medical proxy, a copy of my old Navy discharge papers, and nothing else. No shaving kit. No books. No slippers. Nothing that suggested I'd be coming back soon. Inside, the air smelled like disinfectant and melted plastic. A receptionist behind the desk, young, bleached hair, pink nails, gum snapping between her teeth, waved us forward without looking up. "Name?" "Harry Brown," I said, with the kind of authority that once could stop a room. It didn't stop her. She glanced at her screen. "Got a Henry B. here. Night observation unit." She motioned to a nurse behind her, who rolled forward in orthopedic shoes and clipped a plastic ID band to my wrist. "Does the patient get confused sometimes?" the nurse asked. Before I could even part my lips, Kyle barked a laugh. "Only about bills." Megan giggled behind her phone. "Say hi to the family chat, Dad," she cooed, recording the moment like it was a milestone. "Your first day as a celebrity." I didn't smile. Not really. But I did nod. That same silent, slow nod I gave Kyle years ago when he handed me a brochure titled "Generational Wealth Begins Now" and asked for access to my account. That nod he thought meant trust. That nod he was still counting on. And I let him. Because Kyle had no idea what was coming. The walk to the room was longer than it should have been. My legs were fine, my back still mostly straight, but they treated me like I was fragile. A burden on wheels. 2 nurses flanked me like security at a crime scene. One pointed out the vending machines like I cared. The other told me what time dinner was, then what time quiet hours began. When we reached B12, she opened the door like a magician about to unveil a trick. But there was no magic behind it. Just beige. Beige walls. Beige curtains. A beige bedspread so stiff it could have stood on its own. On the door, a paper placard read Henry B. Underneath, in pen, "Night observation." I stared at that label for a long time. "Henry," I said out loud. "I'm Harry." "Oh," the nurse shrugged. "Sometimes they shorten names in the system. It'll get fixed eventually." Eventually. Kyle clapped his hands once, too loud for the space. "Well, you're all set, Harry. Place looks cozy. We'll swing by next week to check on you. Sound good?" I looked at him. Really looked. His jaw was tense beneath the grin. Sweat had started to gather just below his hairline. Nervous tells. Megan, on the other hand, was already halfway out the door. "Wait," I said, and she turned, not out of concern but surprise. She thought I'd already folded. "Don't I get a key?" I asked, voice level. Kyle laughed. "You don't need one here, buddy. Staff handles everything." There it was again. Buddy. That word people use when they want to make their betrayal sound like a favor. They left me there that afternoon. Said they had errands to run. Said they'd call later. Said they loved me. They didn't call. Dinner was served on a tray with no salt and no soul. A nurse came in at 7 p.m. to check my blood pressure, even though I'd had perfect vitals for the past 20 years. Another popped in at 10 p.m. to remind me to brush my teeth. At midnight, someone shined a flashlight through my window to make sure I hadn't wandered. Wandered. Like a lost child. Or worse, like a liability. At 2 a.m., my phone buzzed. Kyle. Hang tight, buddy. We'll get you home once the contractors finish. I stared at the message until the screen dimmed and the room returned to its pale, passive darkness. He really thought I'd believe this was about wiring. They thought I didn't see the signs. The way Megan's voice had turned high and clipped, like she was tolerating me. The way Kyle kept pushing papers across the dinner table with big words and little print. The way Megan stopped asking about the garden I built with my own hands behind that house, the same garden she once played in barefoot, clutching a daisy chain. That house was mine. Paid in full, 1986. Mortgage burned in the fireplace. 40 years of maintenance, painting, patching, pruning. I rebuilt the porch myself. I installed the attic fan. I replaced the roof after the 1992 storm that left half the block underwater. Every nail in that house had once been in my hand. Now they were rewiring it. And I was somewhere else. Somewhere with hourly checks and polite nods from strangers. But there was one thing they didn't know. One thing Kyle, with all his swagger and spreadsheets, had failed to factor in. I was the owner of the holding company that owned Cedar Grove. They didn't know because I never told them. Because I never talked about Walter. My brother. My twin. We looked nothing alike but thought in sync. When Walter passed away 5 years ago, he left me more than his dusty workshop and his dog-eared books. He left me access. Quiet power. An inheritance disguised as a dormant fund. Northern Wind Holdings. No one paid attention to it. Not the neighbors, not the family, not even Megan when she helped me set up online banking. But that LLC held shares. Property. Influence. Cedar Grove, among others. A week before they dropped me off here, I made a call. Just one. Amy Reeves, please, I said to the receptionist. Who may I say is calling? Tell her it's Walter's brother. There was a pause. Then, she'll take your call. Now, as I sat in this borrowed bed under a fluorescent moon, I knew Amy had already set things in motion. Papers were moving. Boards were shifting. Titles were changing hands. Quietly. Legally. I might have been checked in as Henry B. A man confused about bills. But when Cedar Grove's records updated in 7 days, they'd see something else. Owner, Harry Brown. Full control. No proxy needed. And this renovation? It wasn't for the house. It was for them. On the 3rd day, he arrived. Kyle. Wearing the jacket he saves for court dates and car loans. He had that look on his face, the one he wore when he thought he was being clever. I could smell the cologne before I heard the knock. It was cheap, synthetic, and loud. A bottle probably called Success or Dominance or some other desperate word. He knocked twice, then entered like he owned the place. Hey, Harry, he said, cheerier than he had any right to be. Just checking in on Dad. I was sitting in the beige armchair under the window, a crossword open on my lap, pen in hand. I didn't look up right away. He hated that. You settling in okay? Food decent? Anyone giving you trouble? He asked, dropping his designer folder on the table like a salesman who already knew the answer to every question. I closed the crossword and finally looked at him. Kyle, I said. You didn't come here for the meatloaf. He grinned, that too wide smile stretched across his face. No, of course not. I just thought, well, since you've got a lot on your plate, you might want some help. He opened the folder with a flourish, revealing neatly stacked papers, each clipped and highlighted. Just some documentation. Simple stuff. Helps lighten your load. Which load are we lightening? I asked, though I already knew. He began his pitch. Temporary guardianship. Just until the renovation is over. Financial oversight because bills can get overwhelming, especially with the new taxes. Medical authority too, in case anything happens and we need to act fast. Every word was buttered. Soft, warm, meant to glide over your brain before you knew it was a cage. He slid a pen toward me like it was a glass of lemonade on a hot day. Better to sign today, he said. I've got a notary waiting in the car. You brought a notary? I asked. Yeah. She's great. Does house calls. Makes the process smoother. I flipped the first page. Power of attorney. Durable, not limited. Next page, full guardianship in the event of cognitive decline. Third page, medical authority, effective immediately. Who drew these up? Oh, a friend of mine. LegalZoom type deal, he said, laughing like that was charming. Just boilerplate. Boilerplate. That's what he called the act of leashing an old man's life to his own pocket. You said this was temporary, I said. Yeah, just while the contractors do their thing. Funny. Contractors haven't called. Haven't seen a single permit filed either. Kyle's smile twitched. Just a flicker, but it was enough. It's all being handled. Behind the scenes. You know how these things are. I flipped to the last page. A signature line. Why the 24-hour deadline? I asked. What? I looked him in the eye. You told the nurse yesterday that I'd be signing by end of day today. I overheard it. He tried to play it off. It's just, for efficiency. Who's your attorney? Harry, Dad, look, this isn't complicated. It's just for your safety. Then you won't mind if my lawyer looks it over. Silence. A long one. He adjusted his cufflink. Straightened his tie. Didn't answer. Your lawyer, he said finally, voice lighter but tighter. That's unnecessary, Harry. I nodded. So was the notary in the car. But here we are. He started to sweat. Not visibly, not yet. But I could see it in his jaw, in the pulse at his temple. He stood there for a moment, folder in hand, flipping through the pages like maybe one of them had changed while we spoke. I'll leave these with you, he said at last. Take your time. I will, I said, folding the papers and placing them back in the folder. And I'll have Amy look them over. He froze. Amy? My attorney, I said. You'll like her. She's sharp. Doesn't use LegalZoom. He gave a short laugh, but it didn't reach his eyes. Right. Okay. Sounds good. I'll check back tomorrow. I smiled. Or never. He left the room slower than he entered. Left the cologne behind, too. I sat back in my chair, unfolded the crossword again, and filled in the word I'd been stuck on. 7-letter word for trap disguised as help. The answer was ambush. I underlined it. Later that afternoon, I walked the halls of Cedar Grove. No one noticed me. I moved like wallpaper, quiet, old, invisible. But I was listening. Watching. Most residents here had families that loved them too much to let them live free. Sons who signed checks with trembling hands. Daughters who sold wedding rings to pay for private care. I heard stories whispered during bingo, between bites of applesauce. That night, in my room, I laid the paperwork across the bed. Highlighted. Notarized. Packaged. But useless. I took photos of each page. Sent them to Amy with a brief note. Kyle's offering protection. Wants full control. Please prepare countermeasures. Her reply came 5 minutes later. Already expected. Tomorrow we begin your own protections. And we record everything. I slept better that night. The next morning, I asked the nurse for a copy of my wellness report. She hesitated. You know, just to make sure the staff isn't mislabeling me as confused, I said. She looked surprised. You're remarkably sharp. I know, I said, and smiled. Just needed it in writing. An hour later, a man from admin walked into my room. Mr. Brown, he said, we'd like to do a routine evaluation. Quick cognitive check. No big deal. I looked at him squarely. Who sent you? I asked. Your family requested it. Said there were concerns. Concerns like what? He shuffled. Forgetfulness. Agitation. Money management issues. I nodded. Let's proceed. We spent 20 minutes playing games. Memory, logic, sequences. I passed with flying colors. At the end, he sat back. Well, frankly, you're in better shape than I am. I signed the evaluation form and requested a copy. He left. An hour later, Kyle texted, thinking about you. Let me know if you need anything. Love you. I didn't reply. Instead, I turned my phone toward the camera Amy had helped me install in the bookshelf. A little green light blinked back at me. I held up the folder, opened to the signature page, and said, Attempted manipulation. Financial entrapment. Unlawful coercion. first documented effort. Then I placed the folder into a drawer and locked it. When the nurse came in at noon, I was sipping tea. "How's the renovation going?" I asked casually. "Oh," she said, "haven't seen a contractor all week. Place still looks the same." I nodded. Just like I thought. This wasn't about renovations. It was a velvet-gloved grab. A soft invasion. A parasite cloaked in paperwork. But what Kyle didn't realize is that while he counted on my weakness, I was counting his steps. And every signature I would never give. It was Saturday when Megan staged the visit. She didn't call ahead. She never did anymore. Just showed up with her bright voice and her bright friends, 3 women from her church group, all wide smiles and subtle judgment. Their names dissolved as soon as they introduced themselves, like soap bubbles that vanished the moment they hit the air. I was sitting in the activity room, nursing a lukewarm coffee, pretending to read a paperback I had memorized years ago. Megan swept in like a politician on a hospital tour. "Hi, Dad," she said, too loud. "We brought muffins." The women nodded in unison, clutching Tupperware like offerings. One of them leaned toward me, speaking in the soft voice people reserve for toddlers and the elderly. "And how are we today, Mr. Brown?" I gave her the kind of smile that says, "Don't waste your tone on me, sweetheart." "Fine, thank you. Just reading about a man who survives his children." She didn't get it. Kyle followed a few minutes later, late as usual, holding the infamous folder like a sacred text. He greeted everyone with that practiced warmth, kissed Megan's cheek, and stood behind her like a ventriloquist waiting for his dummy to speak. Megan turned to the women. "Dad's been doing really well here," she said, clasping her hands. "He's starting to forget things a little more often, but we're keeping him stable." I blinked. "Stable?" She laughed. "Oh, don't worry. He still remembers me. Right, Dad?" I smiled politely. "Sometimes." Her laugh was brittle. "He's such a jokester," she told the women. Kyle stepped forward. "We're trying to help him get his affairs in order. There are some documents he just needs to sign. You know, guardianship, asset management, that kind of thing." He waved the folder like a priest with a hymnal. One of the women murmured something about responsible children. Another one nodded. The third glanced around uncomfortably. Megan leaned in. "It's for his protection. We all agree it's time." I looked at her carefully. "Time for what?" I asked. "To let go, Dad," she said sweetly, like she was reading a bedtime story. "To let someone else take care of things. You've earned your rest." Behind her, the bookshelf camera blinked green. Amy had installed it that morning. The maintenance guy owed her a favor, and she used it well. Tiny lens. Wi-Fi enabled. Positioned directly behind a framed print of a lighthouse, ironic, considering how lost they thought I was. I shifted in my seat. "You know, I've been thinking a lot about letting go." Megan beamed. "That's wonderful, Dad." "Yes," I said, turning to Kyle. "I've been thinking about letting go of illusions." He raised an eyebrow. I leaned forward. "Tell me again about your consulting firm." The air changed. He cleared his throat. "What?" "Your consulting firm. What exactly do you consult on?" "Financial strategy," he said quickly. "Asset management, real estate, tax mitigation." "And your clients?" "A mix," he said. "Some retired professionals, a few small business owners." I nodded. "Anyone from Cedar Grove?" He blinked. "What?" "Any clients from this facility? Any elderly folks who've let go recently?" The church ladies stopped chewing their muffins. I don't see how that's relevant," he said. I smiled. "It's relevant because I've reviewed some things." His eyes narrowed. "What things?" I gestured to the camera. "Investment portfolios. Your firm's intake documents. The ones where you get a cut from managed assets once the transfer's done." Megan stiffened. "Dad, where are you getting this?" Kyle's voice sharpened. "That's private business." "No," I said, "that's fraud if it's based on coercion." He leaned forward, voice low. "Careful, Harry." I didn't flinch. "Careful, Kyle. This conversation is being recorded." He froze. Behind me, the bookshelf blinked again, confirmation. "You're lying," he said. "Am I?" I reached into my pocket and held up a small device. "Wireless transmitter. Sends live audio to a secure server. But don't worry. The videos synced too. The church women began to shift uncomfortably. Is this a joke? One of them asked Megan. Megan's voice cracked. Dad, why would you? I cut her off. Why would I record my own daughter staging an intervention with false testimony? Why would I document her husband's attempt to obtain my signature under false pretenses? Why would I expose two people I helped raise and supported for years? Kyle's voice rose. You're paranoid. No, I said. I'm prepared. He threw the folder onto the table. Sign it before it's too late. I picked it up, calmly flipped to the last page, then looked at him squarely. You're right, I said. It's almost too late. He smiled, thinking I was folding. Too late for you to walk out of here with your name intact, I finished. The room fell silent. Kyle's face crumpled, not in sadness, but in calculation. You could see the wheels spinning behind his eyes. Damage control. Optics. Legal fallout. Megan opened her mouth, but no words came out. I've already sent copies of this conversation to my attorney, I said. And to the facility director. And to the Oregon State Elder Abuse Task Force. You wouldn't, Kyle started. I stood up. I already did. The church ladies stood too. One whispered, we should go. They left without saying goodbye. Kyle stood frozen for a moment, then snatched the folder off the table and stormed out without another word. Megan lingered. Dad, she said softly now, like I hadn't just watched her strip me bare in front of strangers. We're trying to help. No, I said. You're trying to take. She looked like she might cry. But she didn't. Megan doesn't cry unless there's an audience. When she turned and left, I waited exactly 60 seconds before I picked up the remote and turned on the flat screen. Channel 12. The local news. I sipped my coffee. Then I pressed the intercom and asked the nurse for a piece of apple pie. No reason. Just wanted something sweet after watching the first mask crack louder than any power drill in their so-called renovation. Monday morning, I told the nurse I needed to supervise the renovation. I smiled when I said it. She smiled back, unsure if I was joking. That's the thing about being 70, no one knows when you're serious. They all think clarity fades with the calendar. But mine never has. If anything, the fog they think surrounds me has become my best disguise. She wheeled me to the exit in one of those damn chairs they insist on using for liability. Kyle hadn't revoked my keys yet. Probably thought he didn't need to. I signed myself out, got in the cab I called, and gave the driver my address, my real address, the one I hadn't stepped foot in for 5 days. The house they'd sworn was crawling with electricians and drywall crews. There were no trucks out front. No cones. No ladders. No workers. Of course there weren't. The house was exactly as I left it, except colder. Emptier. My garden was wilted. My porch untouched. The windshield I made from copper pipe and old keys barely stirred. Inside, the silence rang louder than the city. I walked from room to room like a ghost revisiting his old haunts. The kitchen smelled stale. The guest room bed was still made from when Megan last pretended to visit. A faint dust outline on the table marked where her wine glass had once sat. I ignored it. Instead, I went to the workshop. Walter's sanctuary. My brother had been a private man. He didn't talk much, didn't entertain, didn't trust anyone but me. We were twins, though we rarely shared the same thoughts aloud. Instead, we built things together. Birdhouses. Bookcases. Bad radios. And once, just once, a safe. It was a joke at the time. Just in case someone tries to put us in a home, he said. Now it wasn't funny. I moved the shelves aside. They were heavy, bolted to the studs, but I knew how to tilt them just right. Behind them, pine paneling with a circular cutout no one would see unless they knew to look. I pressed my hand against the panel and gave it one sharp knock, then 2 more. The panel slid aside. There it was. The safe was small but solid, steel-plated with a rotary dial and no handle. No fingerprint scanner. No keypad. Just analog security, built in an age where trust lived in metal. I knelt down, knees cracking in protest. I spun the dial. 34-17-81. Walter's birthday in reverse. Click. Inside, a manila envelope, 3 black USB drives, a battered checkbook, and a letter. I opened the envelope first. trust documents, deeds, an account list. The top sheet had the number, $18 million, tucked into 2 trusts. Protected, diversified, out of reach. The letter was short. Harry, if you're reading this, someone's coming for you. Don't panic. You have everything you need. I protected it like I promised. The trust is active. The assets are clean. The shell company is preloaded. Just call Amy Reeves. She knows what to do. And don't let Kyle get away with anything. P.S. The holding company owns 27% of Cedar Grove. You can increase that. The name's Northern Wind Holdings. I left it ready. All you have to do is say the word. Love you, brother. Walter. I sat back on my heels. It wasn't the money that got me. It was the fact that he saw this coming. Before Megan. Before Kyle. Before even I did. He'd read the future and hidden my lifeline inside a safe we built for fun. I stood up, legs trembling but alive with adrenaline. I grabbed the documents, the USBs, the checkbook. I closed the safe, reset the shelves, locked the workshop behind me. Then I walked back inside and picked up the phone. Amy answered on the second ring. I was expecting your call, she said. How? Because the live feed from the bookshelf camera shows you're not at Cedar Grove. I smiled. Can we talk? Already cleared my afternoon. Her office sat downtown, tucked between a dentist and a bakery. Modern, all glass and chrome, but not flashy. The kind of place that says competent, not corrupt. She greeted me at the door. Black slacks, crisp blouse, sleeves rolled just enough to show she worked. Her hair was short. Her eyes sharper. You brought the folder? She asked. I handed her the documents. She flipped through them with the kind of speed that comes from experience. Guardianship scam, she said after 20 seconds. Amateur hour. You've seen this before? All the time, she said. Family initiates a slow smear. Claims cognitive decline. Gets medical notes, usually bought, not earned. Then they introduce a concerned lawyer, start the guardianship paperwork, and boom. Assets under their name. Game over. Can we stop it? She looked up. We can end it. I handed her Walter's letter. She read it, then smiled. I knew your brother. Met him once. Smart man. Paranoid, but smart. He was right. Yes, she said, he was. This gives us a strong hand. She made a few calls while I drank bad coffee and stared at a photo on her shelf. Her law school graduation. Her father beside her, beaming. A man who'd probably never tried to steal from her. An hour later, she leaned back in her chair. We're going to do this 2 ways, she said. First, we move the remaining Cedar Grove shares under Northern Wind Holdings. Quietly. Once you hit 51%, you own it outright. And the second? We freeze your public assets. Any accounts Megan or Kyle might try to access, we move. If they make a move, it'll trigger a fraud alert. What about the trust? Already protected, she said. Walter did it right. But we'll add another layer, power of revocation under your sole authority, no proxy. I nodded. Also, she added, you now have a living revocable trust. We'll add a clause. Anyone who challenges your competence or your estate is automatically disinherited. Elegant, I said. Cruel, she replied. But necessary. I leaned forward. I want to do something else. She raised an eyebrow. I want to purchase Cedar Grove. Through Northern Wind Holdings. Quietly. Her brow furrowed. You're serious? Dead serious. Why? Because I'm tired of playing defense. Amy smiled. It'll take a few days. But it can be done. Start now. Do you want to evict anyone? Not yet. Why not? Because I want Kyle to come back, I said. And I want him to try again. Why? I looked her in the eye. Because this time, when he does, I want to put the handcuffs on him myself. She didn't smile. She nodded. And then she picked up the phone. By Wednesday, Northern Wind Holdings controlled Cedar Grove outright. The paperwork passed through 3 offices, 1 shell company, and a lot of silence. That was the key. No fanfare, no announcements, no change in the lobby sign. Amy was meticulous. She filed the documents under a real estate transfer clause so obscure, even the facility director didn't catch the name change until his paycheck came from a different sender. It didn't matter. The new owner wasn't interested in cosmetics yet. By Thursday morning, I was ready. The weather had turned. Gray sky, cold wind, the kind that made everything feel heavier. But I felt lighter than I had in years. Because today was the day. The trap was set. I called Kyle at 9:02 a.m. I knew he was awake. Megan always dropped hints on Facebook, early morning grind with my man, briefcase hot beverage, like his ambition needed applause. He picked up on the second ring. Kyle, I said. Calm. Even. Friendly. You were right. I've been thinking about things. About legacy. I paused just long enough. I think it's time I signed those papers. Silence. He wasn't expecting that. Oh, he said, careful. Come by this afternoon. Let's get it done. He cleared his throat. That's great, Harry. Really great. I'll bring the folder. And the notary? Yes. Yes, of course. She's available today. Perfect, I said. 3 p.m. 3 it is. We hung up. Then I called Amy. It's on, I said. She replied with one word, good. By noon, everything was in place. I sat in the common room pretending to read. My pulse was calm. A nurse passed by and offered me tea. I declined. Another walked through, pushing a cart of medications and humming something tuneless. In the corner, the TV played a rerun of a courtroom show. Fitting. At 2:30, Amy arrived with 2 detectives in plain clothes. They wore khakis, cardigans, and the kind of smiles you don't trust. They slipped into room B10, the one next to mine. Hidden microphones had already been planted in mine, beneath the bed, inside the vent, even behind the cross on the wall. The bookshelf camera was still rolling. Kyle would sit exactly where he did last time. At 3:02, he arrived. Button-down shirt. Slim-fit blazer. The briefcase. His notary, a tired-looking woman with a permanent wince, trailed behind him. They smiled at the receptionist. He handed over his ID like it was routine. Here to see my father-in-law, he said. Room B12. She nodded. Go on through. He walked in like a man with a mission. Harry, he said. You're looking good. Thank you, I said. Sit down. The notary followed, opened her bag, and began unpacking. Kyle pulled out the documents like a magician prepping a trick. Just the basics. Permanent guardianship, financial management, and medical proxy. I flipped through them slowly. We added a few clarifications, he said. Nothing major. Just to ensure smoother handling of your assets in case of decline. You're thinking ahead, I said. Always, he said, smiling. Better to protect things before they get messy. The notary slid the last page forward. Signature and date here, Mr. Brown. I picked up the pen. Paused. Then looked up. Funny thing, Kyle. He froze. What's that? There may be more money than you realize. His eyes sharpened. Oh. I've been going through some old papers. Walter left me some accounts I forgot about. Really? He said, too fast. Quite a bit, actually. I was thinking maybe you'd help me move some of it. You know, consolidate. He licked his lips. Of course. That's exactly what this paperwork allows us to do. I signed 2 pages. The first was a decoy guardianship form identical to his. But it was printed on different paper. A forensic analyst could tell. The second was a waiver allowing law enforcement to proceed. Done, I said, capping the pen. He looked down at the signatures and smiled, satisfied. Excellent, he said. You'll feel so much better. Actually, I said, standing, I already do. The door opened. 2 detectives stepped in. Mr. Hill, one said. Kyle looked up confused. Yes, you're under arrest for attempted elder fraud, conspiracy to commit financial exploitation, and presenting fraudulent documents to secure fiduciary control. The words hit him like bricks. What? Wait, what? The notary dropped her pen. The detective stepped forward. Put your hands on the table. Kyle's face drained. Harry, what is this? I met his eyes. This is what it feels like when the old man isn't as helpless as you thought. The handcuffs clicked. Metal on bone. Turn around, the detective ordered. Kyle sputtered. Wait, no, Megan doesn't know I didn't, this isn't. He was cut off as they led him out. Down the hallway. through the same doors he once walked through like a prince. This time, everyone watched. The receptionist stared. A nurse gasped. A resident clapped. I stayed seated. At 5:45 that evening, the news ran the story. Local station. Middle of the broadcast. They flashed his mugshot, Kyle Hill, 34, arrested on suspicion of elder financial abuse. Megan called at 6:03. I didn't answer. She called again. Left a voicemail. Her voice broke halfway through. I didn't know, Dad. I swear I didn't know. I played it twice. Then I sent her a copy of the audio file, Kyle explaining his cut from the assets, caught on the bookshelf camera. The next voicemail came at 7:22. She didn't cry this time. She just breathed heavily and hung up. Silence, I thought. It never sounded so good. 2 days later, Megan showed up at Cedar Grove. Not alone this time. She brought Jenny, her mother, my ex-wife, the woman I hadn't seen face to face in over a decade. The last time we spoke was over a terse voicemail about alimony payments and a mutual friend's funeral. Now she stood beside Megan like a lawyer flanking her client, arms crossed, eyes scanning the facility as though she were judging its wallpaper and its morals in the same glance. Megan looked pale. Not tearful. Not angry. Just vacant. Like someone standing in the wreckage of a house they helped build but swore would never burn. They didn't ask permission to come in. They walked straight into the common room like they still owned the world. I was seated by the chess table, pretending to contemplate a move I'd already decided on hours ago. The same bishop Kyle once mocked me for, still using wrong. Megan's voice broke the silence. Dad. I didn't look up. Dad, we need to talk. I moved a pawn forward slowly. Jenny stepped closer. Harry, for God's sake, listen to your daughter. That's when I looked up. Not at Megan. At Jenny. She's not here as my daughter, I said. She's here as Kyle's damage control. Jenny bristled. He's in jail. And where were you 2 weeks ago, when he was showing up with fraudulent papers and a notary? Jenny glanced at Megan, who still hadn't sat down. Her hands were trembling slightly. The kind of tremble that comes from panic, not regret. We didn't know, Megan said. I didn't know. Amy entered the room behind them like an executioner entering court. She carried a folder. Ms. Brown, she said to Megan, cool as winter. You may want to sit down. Megan hesitated, then obeyed. Jenny hovered. Amy opened the folder on the table. Laid out 3 documents. One was a bank statement. Another was a spreadsheet. The third was a photo, a screenshot, actually Kyle in a bar, posing with 2 men. One of them was a lawyer. The other was a bank clerk. This is from 6 weeks ago, Amy said. Your husband. At a bar. With his partners. Megan blinked. Partners? Amy nodded. We've been monitoring his activity since last year. These 2 gentlemen helped him funnel funds from at least 3 other elderly clients. Jenny cut in. Wait, what? Amy continued. They ran a simple but effective scheme. Target elders with assets but minimal oversight. Claim a health concern. Push for guardianship. Liquidate accounts within 6 months. Disappear. Megan's hand went to her mouth. Jenny leaned in, squinting at the spreadsheet. This can't be real. Amy turned the page. Showed the routing numbers. These transfers went into an account under your name, Megan. Joint with Kyle. Megan recoiled. No, I didn't. He said it was a savings account, he told me. You never asked why an extra $8,000 appeared last month? I thought it was consulting. Amy raised an eyebrow. He's very good at lies. I watched them both unravel. Piece by piece. The mother crumbling in righteous indignation. The daughter sinking into a pit she helped dig. By Wednesday, Amy said, you'll receive a subpoena. Jenny stood. Subpoena? You co-signed on the joint account. But Amy cut her off. We're not pressing charges against you. Yet. But we are pressing charges against Kyle. And as of this morning, 2 more of his associates were arrested. She pulled out her phone and laid it face up on the table. Photos. Mugshots. The lawyer. The bank clerk. Both looking like they'd just been yanked out of sleep. Megan looked at me. Dad, what's happening? What's happening, I said, is that your husband gambled with more than money. He gambled with family. He lost. Jenny grabbed her purse. This is outrageous. You're framing him. Amy turned, cold as stone. Your daughter's name is on a withdrawal slip from a nursing home client in Salem. You want to keep talking about who framed who? Jenny fell silent. Megan looked like she was going to vomit. What do I do? You call a divorce attorney, Amy said. Today. Jenny started to protest, but Megan cut her off. Her voice was quiet but clear. Mom, stop. She stood. I didn't want to see it, she said, more to herself than anyone. But it was all there. The lies. The missing time. The sudden trips. The new shoes. He never had clients. He had victims. She turned to me. I'm sorry. It didn't hit me like I thought it would. Maybe because it was too late. Or maybe because I'd stopped needing her apology the moment I saw that signature on Kyle's first power of attorney draft. I nodded. She left without another word. Jenny stayed behind for a moment, glowering. She looked at Amy, then at me. You always did like playing the hero. I looked at her. And you always did like defending men who lied. She left, heels tapping like a judge's gavel. By that evening, news of the arrests had spread. Local coverage first. Then regional. A small piece on the state financial abuse hotline. Then the story grew legs. Guardianship scam uncovered. Local man accused of exploiting elderly for millions. Photos of Kyle's mugshot appeared on 3 different stations. Then the deeper story came. Investigators traced his connections to 7 other nursing homes. Amy handed over everything, documents, camera footage, bank statements. The state attorney general picked up the case. Meanwhile, Cedar Grove underwent rapid changes. First, the abusive head nurse was fired. Amy had pulled his personnel file. Turns out he'd been reported twice for physical misconduct. Then the cameras in private rooms were disabled. Consent forms revised. Staff retrained. I personally tore down the old sign that read, "Residents must defer to guardians." We replaced it with something new. A single plaque in the lobby. Families welcome. Manipulation not. And underneath it, in smaller letters, new ownership. New rules. On Thursday, I stood in front of that plaque and stared at it for a long time. Behind me, 2 residents sat in wheelchairs, watching Wheel of Fortune. I heard one of them whisper, "That's the new boss. Bought the whole damn place." The other replied, "About time someone did." I smiled. Because this wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about reclamation. And I wasn't done. Not by a long shot. Amy called it turning the knife into a scalpel. You got justice, she said, leaning back in her chair, but now you want infrastructure. I didn't argue. Because I wasn't satisfied watching Kyle get walked out in cuffs. I wanted to build something that could keep this from happening again. Something that would slam the door on these quiet predators who wore family titles like armor while draining the people who raised them. I wanted a machine. So we built one. We started with seed money $3.5 million from the Walter Trust. Not all of it, not even half, but enough to spark fire. Amy formed a nonprofit overnight. We called it REACH, Rapid Elder Abuse Counter-Host Initiative. A mouthful, but we needed the acronym to sting. Lawyers. Forensic accountants. Investigators. Whistleblower protection. A 24/7 hotline. And most importantly, microgrants for victims too scared to leave, because the only thing more terrifying than betrayal is poverty. We hired former prosecutors and partnered with 2 retired FBI agents. Amy had contacts in state courts. I had something better: mailing lists, alumni groups, bridge clubs, retired union officers. Every connection Walter and I had ever shaken hands with over the last 50 years. We started small. 2 weeks in, we had 11 calls. 3 weeks in, we had 9 raids. By the end of the first month, for more arrests, 2 sons, a daughter, and 1 nephew, with no blood relation and a history of identity theft. But the real win was case number 12, a woman named Joanne, 83, living in a condo paid off in 1982. Her granddaughter had moved in with a boyfriend, promised to take care of her. Within 6 months, the title to the condo had mysteriously transferred. Joanne was living in the guest room, eating instant noodles. No medical access. No bank account. She called the hotline on a Sunday night. By Tuesday, Joan had a pro bono legal team. By Friday, her deed was restored. Her granddaughter? Arrested for forgery, elder abuse, and grand theft. That's when the media caught on. They loved it. Widower turns the tables, the retiree revolution, and the name that stuck, the Brown Rule. The headlines came with praise, sure, but the real prize was attention. Judges started asking more questions. Banks began flagging unusual power of attorney filings. And most importantly, victims started speaking. I received letters. Hundreds. Typed. Handwritten. Some on lined yellow paper. Some with coffee stains and the scent of lavender. They came from Idaho, Nevada, Georgia, even a 91-year-old widow from Maine who wrote, "I thought I was crazy. Turns out I was just being robbed politely. It broke me, then rebuilt me." So I doubled down. Amy and I pushed for legislation, nothing major, just a state-level policy memo that said, all guardianship claims involving immediate family members must be reviewed for signs of coercion, manipulation, or financial misconduct. Any claim involving recent account changes or sudden cognitive diagnoses must trigger automatic fraud investigation before court approval. Simple. Brilliant. Effective. We didn't ask for laws. We made a policy. The governor called it proactive. The attorney general called it game-changing. But the scammers? They called it something else. They called it the brown choke. We knew this because Amy had a contact who infiltrated a small but thriving online group, a forum where amateur legal predators swapped templates, bragged about winning inheritance early, and traded tips on how to nudge a parent into a memory clinic without raising flags. Our contact messaged Amy directly. They're scared. Your name is blacklisted. One thread said, "Don't touch widowers or vets, Brown's watching." That made me smile. But what made me laugh, really laugh, was when one user wrote, "Cedar Grove is off limits. Whole place is wired now. Some old man owns it. Total psycho." They meant me. Good. Let them flinch. Because Cedar Grove had changed. The halls were still quiet, but the whispers had gone. The staff now held weekly transparency meetings. A new visiting policy was implemented, cameras in public areas, privacy in rooms. Every resident got a personal advocate from a rotating legal pool. And every time a family member brought in paperwork to review, it went through the front desk scanner, automatically sent to Amy's office. We also posted a new sign next to the welcome desk. This home belongs to those who live here, not those who wish to manage them. But the best part? A tiny plaque, brass, no bigger than my hand, mounted in the hallway outside my room. Cedar Grove aging with dignity since the owner moved in. Underneath it, in smaller type, the new boss likes chess and condensed milk. I didn't ask for that second line, but someone added it. Probably Denise, the nurse who made me tea every Thursday and beat me at dominoes every other week. The sign became a legend. Residents touched it for luck. Staff nodded at it when they passed. Even visitors paused. Because it meant something now. It meant we fought back. It meant one man turned a hospital bracelet into a badge of ownership. And it meant that maybe, just maybe, we weren't invisible after all. By fall, my name was on more than just the plaque. It was on a docket in Salem, on a schedule in D.C., and on a dozen placards in civic halls across the state that read, Elder Justice Reform Committee, Special Testimony, Harry Brown. I didn't ask for the spotlight, but when it found me, I made damn sure I didn't flinch. The first time I stood behind a podium in front of lawmakers, I wore my navy tie. Not because I wanted to impress anyone, but because Walter had once told me, if you're going to speak for people who can't speak for themselves, wear something that says you've already fought. So I did. I told them about Cedar Grove. About Kyle. About the papers I didn't sign and the trap he walked into. About Walter's plan and the fund that now ran 24/7, protecting people they'd never meet. I didn't beg for their sympathy. I demanded their clarity. You want to know what elder abuse looks like? I said, voice steady. It looks like Sunday dinners where no one asks how you are. It looks like pre-filled forms brought with muffins and smiles. It looks like your own blood telling you, this is for your safety, while positioning a pen in your hand like it's a weapon. I paused. And then, old age isn't an invitation for thieves. It's not a slow countdown to irrelevance. It's a battlefield. And the weapons now aren't bruises or bruised fruit. They're legal terms. They're fake smiles. They're notarized betrayals. Silence followed. Then applause. Even the committee chair looked shaken. 2 days later, the Elder Guardianship Oversight Act passed committee review in Oregon. A pilot program for review boards, mandatory asset audits, and family appointment reviews. They called it the first proactive structure of its kind in the nation. The headline in the Oregonian? The man who bought his own retirement home now reshapes state law. But the real test came soon after. Kyle's parole hearing. The courthouse smelled like old coffee and pine cleaner. I arrived an hour early. Amy came with me, briefcase in hand, face unreadable. She'd seen too many redemption arcs fail to trust remorse on sight. Kyle was thinner. Prison doesn't suit men like him, men used to mirrors and meetings, who never thought they'd be on the wrong side of a metal door. His suit didn't fit anymore. He looked at me just once. Brief. Calculated. Then turned back toward the parole board. He started with a performance. I've reflected, he said, voice soft, almost priestly. I see now that I was misguided. That I didn't respect the vulnerability of aging. That I got caught up in. Amy stood. Permission to interject? She asked. The chair nodded. Amy opened a folder. It wasn't thick. It didn't have to be. She pulled out screenshots, his messages to Megan, joking about the gold mine. His Slack conversations with his partners. His Google searches, how to prove cognitive decline, fast-track guardianship, power of attorney loopholes. The board's eyes narrowed. Then Amy played the audio. His voice clear and smug. Once he signs, we're set. The house, the accounts, he won't even notice. He looked like he wanted to crawl under the table. Amy closed the laptop. Looked straight at the board. That's not remorse, she said. That's regret he got caught. One of the board members, an older woman with glasses perched halfway down her nose, leaned forward. Mr. Hill, in your own words, why did you do it? He hesitated. Then, flatly, some people just have too much money. There it was. The final nail. The room went silent. Then the chair said what I'd been waiting for. Parole denied. Kyle didn't flinch. He just sat there, shrinking. I left the courtroom slowly. Not because I was old, but because I wanted to feel every step. Every second. Every breath of the air he wouldn't have for another 5 years. That night, I returned to Cedar Grove. They were waiting. Residents. Nurses. Even the receptionist who once called me Henry. They clapped when I walked in. Not out of pity. Not out of ceremony. But because the building was ours again. The community was ours again. Someone had drawn a cartoon on the whiteboard in the dining room, a caricature of me holding a chessboard in one hand and a document in the other. The caption read, "Checkmate, kid." I didn't ask who made it. I just walked to the cafeteria and ordered an extra slice of pie. The server smiled. Celebrating? No, I said. Just continuing. Later that week, I received a call from Washington. Not the president, not some senator. Just a staffer from the U.S. Elder Law Coalition asking if I'd be willing to testify again. This time, at the federal level. Amy listened on speakerphone and mouthed the word, yes. I smiled. But I said what Walter would have said. I'll speak, I told the staffer, but only if they're willing to hear something uncomfortable. Pause. Mr. Brown, she replied, I think that's exactly what they need. So I packed a bag. Took Walter's letter with me. Took a photo of Cedar Grove, too. And left a note on my door. Out today. Justice in progress. Back for breakfast. Spring arrived late that year. The blossoms in Cedar Grove's courtyard came weeks after the others downtown, but when they did, they came all at once, like they were waiting for the all-clear. Like the earth itself had paused to see if the old place was still standing after everything we'd put it through. It was. But nothing inside was the same. We'd built something out of the wreckage. The REACH fund, now self-sustaining through recovered assets, was no longer just a lifeline. It had teeth. 2 more regional branches had opened, one in Idaho, one in Northern California. The attorneys we hired worked from laptops and hotel lobbies, chasing paper trails like wolves on the scent. We got results. 41 arrests. $27 million recovered. 90% of victims were made whole. The other 10? Reimbursed by the fund. We refused to leave anyone behind. Cedar Grove became the model. Investigators toured it. Law students studied it. It was no longer that old facility near Portland. It was the fortress. The one with the brass plaque. The one run by the man who wouldn't be stolen. My room was upgraded, not that I needed it. New floors. Adjustable bed. Fresh paint. Still beige, but warmer now. Less like resignation, more like resilience. They offered me a private suite with a garden view. I declined. "This one's fine," I said. "It's where I fought back." They left it alone. Amy and I still met once a week, always at the same table in the lobby. She brought updates. I brought notes. Sometimes she brought her niece, who asked me if I was famous. I told her no. "Famous people sign autographs," I said. "I sign restraining orders." She laughed. Amy laughed too. "Megan?" She emailed once. Subject line, "I'm sorry." The body of the message was short. I looked away. I let him do it. I wanted to believe the money was just coming from nowhere. I see now that I made myself blind. She didn't ask for forgiveness. Smart. I replied only once. Then keep your eyes open forever. I didn't block her. I didn't delete her either. But I never wrote again. Kyle stayed behind bars. Last I heard, he was trying to barter legal advice to other inmates. The irony was brutal. He'd finally become the lawyer he pretended to be. Except now he worked for cigarettes and cold mashed potatoes. Megan divorced him quietly. No fuss. No headlines. Just a line in the local court records and a sealed file. She took a job at a public school as an accountant. Fitting. I wished her well in silence. My house, the one they claimed needed rewiring, finally got its renovation. Legitimate this time. No schemes. No fake permits. I hired a local crew. Paid fair wages. Replaced the roof, updated the wiring, even retiled the bathroom floor that had cracked the year Walter died. When they offered to paint, I told them to leave the workshop untouched. That safe behind the wall? Still there. Still closed. But I visit it sometimes, not to open it, but to remember that the things we build quietly are often the ones that save us. I don't live there anymore. I gave the house to the city on a 50-year lease for $1 a year, under the condition it be used for community elder education. They turned it into a day center. Classes. Internet safety. Financial literacy. Legal counseling. The sign out front reads, "The Harry and Walter Brown Center, built with quiet hands, defended with loud justice." I visited once. Watched a 76-year-old woman show 3 others how to use password managers. They all had coffee in real mugs. Not paper. One had a laptop. The others had notebooks. They looked like generals. They were. Cedar Grove went on. It no longer felt like a holding pen for the forgotten. It felt like a citadel. Nurses stayed longer. Residents spoke louder. We held workshops, open nights, even a talent show. I read poetry. Badly. Got second place to an 88-year-old woman who played the violin like she was bending time. I gave her a standing ovation. The staff laughed when I offered to manage her career. Life wasn't perfect. But it was mine again. And that's more than most people get after 70. Sometimes, people still ask me what the hardest part was. Losing my daughter? Watching my son-in-law become a criminal? Sitting in that beige room with Henry B. taped to the door? No. The hardest part was the first laugh, the first time I laughed after it all. It happened in the garden. A squirrel stole my sandwich. I was mid-bite, looked away, and the little bastard snatched it like he'd been planning it for weeks. I laughed. Hard. And then I cried. Because it meant I was still here. Still human. Still able to find absurdity in the aftermath of betrayal. And that meant I'd won. Not in the newspaper sense. Not in the legal sense. But in the deeper way. The quiet way. The way Walter would have recognized. He'd be proud. Not because I got them arrested, but because I stayed me. Because I didn't let them make me bitter. Because I turned their theft into a foundation. A week after my exile, they discovered the truth. That I owned Cedar Grove. But that was only line 1 on the invoice.